Hi, welcome to the Navigating Neurodiversity podcast. I'm Vivian, registered psychologist, and we're really happy to have with us today Chloé Dunn. Chloé is an art therapist from Haven Art Therapy, and she works with individuals as young as 2 all the way up to adulthood. And today, Chloé and I will be chatting about the topic of the use of art therapy in mental health support. So I'll first invite Chloé to tell us a little bit more about her background and what got her into the field of art therapy. Chloé.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me, Vivian. It's exciting to be here.
Thanks for coming.
So a few people know there's actually a master's in art therapy in Singapore, in La Salle. So that's where I did my studies. I've had quite an exciting art therapy life for the last 10 years. When I graduated, there were very few full-time jobs. So I got to work with many different people. Youngest being 4 months old, eldest being 97. So very different work, but very meaningful work with different ages. Some of my career in art therapy was more children with special needs, teens as well. Then I did a lot of hospital work, mostly with children with cancer and parents. Did some more trauma work, children's shelters, women's shelters, high-risk type clients. And then after becoming a mom, then I went into private practice. And more recently, I opened my own clinic, which is just art therapy based, and we really wanted to embrace the full art therapy experience and hopefully seem a little bit less intimidating for children or parents who may be hesitant to come for therapy.
Yes, thanks for that introduction. So I thought we could start with definitions, because the term art therapy might not be familiar with some of our viewers. So maybe Chloé, you can share with us about what is art therapy and maybe how does it differ from, a typical art class that parents might send their child to.
Yeah, absolutely. So very few people actually know what we do. But we are almost opposite from art class. The only common thing is we use art materials. But really we fit in more in the mental health world, and we're more psychotherapists by training. So I'll give you a quick example. So art class, right? Most of the time, in the traditional art classes, it's not all. Teacher will do something. Okay, students, everyone replicate exactly the same. Okay, it looks a lot prettier than this. But you'll see often the pictures on websites will be these beautiful Monet pictures, or Picasso pictures, but everyone has the same art. So it's very skill-based, right? Technical art skills. Art therapists, we care very little, if not at all, about art skills. It's really more using art to support mental health and using art to calm the child, calm the nervous system, and then explore emotions.
Yes.
Because, talking about children, but adults as well, most of us don't know why we're feeling certain ways. So we think we're feeling a certain way, but there's other emotions under the surface.
Yeah.
Even let's say, I had this chat with my husband, and he's saying, even me, I'm so old. Sometimes I get angry, and I try to think about why I'm angry, but maybe I don't know exactly why. I'm just guessing work.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing with art or play is a lot of unconscious things will come up. And it really helps to make sense of how we're feeling, so then we can deal with these emotions.
I think that's a great explanation. So the modality might be the same art, but the goals are very, very different.
Yes.
Right?
So instead what we're looking at is more, person is anxious, we'll help you be less anxious using art. Person is feeling depressed, big emotions, will help reduce and bring some hope. Or maybe the person is angry and this is a volcano, which doesn't have to be perfect, by the way, which is why it's my more child version of it. Often anger hides many emotions under the surface. Okay, you're feeling angry, let's explore. Is it anger? Is it other things below the surface? And let's help to manage that. So it's really more mental health and sometimes developmental support as well, which is kind of more of a specialization in the field.
Yes. So maybe giving parents like a more concrete idea of what an art therapy session might look like. Could you walk us through, maybe some of the examples of activities that you might do with a child or a teenager?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think both the beauty and the confusing part about our therapy and how we conduct the session is for our clinic, we're very child-led. So the intervention will vary very drastically from one child to another and one need to another, and it may evolve over time.
Yes.
But typically what to expect is first session we'll meet the parents, or I mean if it's an adult, we'll just talk to the adult, right?
Yes.
And we'll set goals. Then based on that, we do have maybe 3 kind of general type of approaches we do. One is first more calming, right? We know if we're feeling so overwhelmed, we can't think about the experience, it's just too much. So it could be things like, I have the soft clay here, you can take one. You can pick your favorite color.
Okay, I'll go for white.
Yeah. And by the way, sometimes decision making itself is quite therapeutic for kids because often kids that are overwhelmed emotionally, everything is beyond their control. So in our sessions, they get to choose what materials they want, which is a small thing, but can make up quite a lot.
Yes, yes.
So some art materials are actually quite soothing and calming. So you know how teenagers will sometimes kids as well, will do this, right, to get anxious. Adults do. Sometimes they'll like look like they're pulling their whole leg off. Or,
that's right. Yeah.
So we do use a lot of sensory materials to calm the person
this
down.
feels so good.
It's quite nice, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It mixes together beautifully as well. You can mix it together. If you mix a little bit, you'll get like a marble kind of look.
I see.
This is a low frustration material. So different materials may work better for different people, right? Some materials that are calming for someone can be overstimulating with someone else. So don't just apply whatever I'm saying today at home with your child.
Yes, it really depends.
But yeah, a lot of it is just calming the nervous system quite literally, so that then we can do more of the work. That's kind of part 1 of our approach. The other part is the whole just processing emotions, right? What am I really feeling? What's going on beneath the surface? It can look quite differently. For some kids, there's a lot of symbol work, which psychologists would use as well, play therapists would use as well, right? So, I mean, it's really amazing, actually. Sometimes kids don't even need to talk about the experience, right? Let's say I'm too anxious, I'm not talking in school. It's quite common, right? Maybe the play has danger, things being overwhelmed. You see a lot in children that have a younger sibling being born as well. There's that reality changes, right? And it's that danger. But then the amazing thing is for many children, sometimes the play will change. And we mix our art materials with play for the younger ones. And there's more resolution in the play slowly. When we still give space for that expression, right? We guide. We don't like suppress. No danger in the play. It's them making sense of their world. But sometimes as there's resolution in the play, then the behavior changes and the emotions are calm. So a lot of exploration in that side, or we can also do some exercises that more directly kind of target the unconscious. So I'll give you a fun example. This is called the scribble game. Okay, so you literally take a paper and you do a scribble. Well, I can see my pen needs a little bit of a upgrade, I think. And then what happens is you look for shapes in scribbles. Typically, I'll tell people to do 3 of them.
Scribbles are so beautiful. I can do such an aesthetic scribble.
It's very interesting to see how people scribble, actually. You see some people, they do it really looks like an artwork, or it's very controlled. Most people will do it a bit more kind of freestyle like this. Or some people will like cover so much of the scribble. But anyways, so what do I see here? I see some kind of boomerang. Okay, that reminds me of the Mario video game growing up. I don't know if anyone grew up with Mario. There's that superpower.
Right, kind of like looking at the clouds and finding shapes and relating. Exactly. Right.
So I like to use that when I'm a bit stuck or when there's so many kind of presenting concerns or difficulties. I don't know where to start. And so then they find different elements, right? I should find one more. Okay, there's a snowman. Okay, fun fact. I'm actually traveling back to Switzerland in December, so maybe my snowman is coming out. And people will make a story out of it. Now, what's amazing is the story almost always relates to the person's life, right? Maybe teens or children with eating disorders, often there'll be themes of food or starving that comes out. Children with businessmen schedules, right? Monday this, Tuesday this, Suddenly there's busy characters. So that gives us a window to say, oh, can you relate to anyone in this story? And then sometimes things come out. So actually it's not uncommon for art therapists to be the first to realize, oh, there's bullying going on. oh, there's abuse going on.
Yeah.
Our main role is not to be the detectives and tell me everything, but things would kind of come up more gently and more naturally.
Yeah.
On that note, I do have to say, we don't have magic powers. We don't go and overanalyze.
Yes, we can't read minds.
But yes, it is a powerful way to kind of explore. So that's the part 2, which is more kind of processing the emotions. And then the last part is more kind of finding resolution and recreating a narrative, right? Kind of more the healing, moving toward part. That could be kind of reflecting on the artwork. So often people will create art and then we'll reflect, okay, let's talk about the artwork. Or it could be just using a topic as a reflection through art as well.
Sure, right. So when you ask them to talk about their artwork, what kind of questions do you ask? Like, do you keep it very open? Like, tell me about what you've drawn here, or would you ask about specific elements that you see in the art?
I would start with more open-ended question. Oh, would you like to tell me about your artwork?
Right.
And then see what that leads.
Sure.
Sometimes I would ask about specific elements, but it's also about timing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes as therapists, we need to get a sense of, is this person ready to even further explore this topic, right?
Exactly. I was wondering about that. Like in the process of creating the art, if they start feeling a lot of frustration or expressing a lot of anger, you would just allow that all to flow out and...
Yes and no. Right. So a lot of the work, similar to what you're doing, I'm sure, is just kind of attuning. What do I do next? What is needed?
Yeah.
So there is that space for exploring and taking things out, but we also need to make sure we're closing things properly, right? Because it's not just about opening a can of worms, it's about making the person feel safe and ready enough to even explore these things in a safe manner. And then every session kind of wrap things up a little bit. So I'll give you an example. Sometimes we'll think about emotions, but we'll think about them visually, right?
Yes.
Well, how am I feeling? Maybe I'm feeling overwhelmed. Maybe I'm feeling depressed. Maybe I'm feeling angry. So they'll use shapes and colors. So we'll explore that. But often, not always, but very often, what I'll do is I'll say, oh, how would you like to feel instead? And then they'll make that feeling. And then it also becomes a reflection on our goals in therapy, right? Okay, so you're feeling this way. You want to feel like the way. Let's work towards that. And that also kind of wraps up the session if it's a very emotionally kind of triggering session.
Yeah, that's quite similar to what we do as well, like your current self and maybe your ideal self and how you would want to move towards and maybe brainstorming some steps. Do you guys do like scaling as well? That's kind of what we do also, like on a scale of 1 to 10. Where do you feel? Okay. Thanks so much, Chloe, for that. I thought it was so good that you demonstrated and gave us a really concrete idea of what it looks like, what can be done in art therapy. So I want to find out who are the children who might benefit from art therapy. Do they include like neurodivergent children as well? For example, those with ADHD and autism?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do see a range of children and adults. We see a lot of children with ADHD, right? And part of it is because it's very hard for them to just sit down and talk, right? Everything is racing, everything is going fast. And so we find that having that sensory element and also some movement element is actually very helpful. Right? It keeps them grounded and it helps them engage better. So our clinic is a bit different than most clinics because we're purely art therapists. We're able to design it in a way that's a studio that works. So we have small rooms, but we also have one much larger space where the whole kind of room becomes a big canvas. So the kids are not limited to drawing on the table. Sometimes we have these used construction toys and they can create large fortresses. We have this whole glass panel where they can draw moving forward.
Cool,
And so we find that works extremely well. Those for the younger kids, like the 2-year-olds that are not going to sit down so long. I mean, sometimes they do, but or the kids with ADHD that do need that extra space. But even some kids that are very kind of reserved and shy, you see the whole body movement being, internalized. Having to physically open up sometimes when they're ready is extremely therapeutic. So a lot of children with ADHD, a lot of children with ASD as well, right? Especially if they're high functioning, they realize they're a bit different than everyone else. Often they still want to make friends, they just don't know how. They get overwhelmed with the sound. Especially if they're in boys' schools, that's kind of a stereotype. Then the sound is even louder, and then they're like, "Oh, I can't take my classmates."
That's so common.
That's common. And beyond the mental health for ASD as well, there's a lot of developmental support we do. So sometimes we do have parents that will say, oh, can you come and help with my child's play skills, right? Imaginative thinking. Art is a great way to work on imagination.
Yes.
And we do so children that come and they have like practically, I don't want to say no imagination, sounds horrible, but they're very factual,
limited.
right?
Yeah.
But if we adapt our approach to them, they can really grow in that area. And we don't need them to have a wild imagination. We just need them to have enough flexibility and enough imagination to, survive in school and in life, right? Things are not purely black and white. There's nuances. So that we see a lot. The other group we see a lot, we get referred to a lot, is the younger children. Because you can't just get a 2-year-old to sit down and talk. So we do.
So talk therapy is tough for the younger ones.
So that would be hard. So we see that a lot. And then the two last categories I'd say is the kids that are just so overwhelmed, right? Thinking about typically trauma, but just so overwhelmed that they're not ready to engage. And so they really need that soothing process first.
Yes.
That's that. And the other ones is the kids, especially teenagers, that are completely out of touch with their emotions. Maybe they grew up being told, be happy, don't cry, don't feel. And so they become teenagers, right? And then they don't know how to handle it often and become self-harm, right? Because we know the cutting is often a physical representation of my emotional pain. And I mean, the sad thing is it's a form of release, right? It's a form of coping. It's just not healthy. And if they don't allow themselves to feel or don't know how they feel, then it's very difficult to do talk work as well. So we would come in to calm, but then also to have that emotional exploration in a very safe and kind of gentle way. And for that population, often moves from calming, reflect, week by week, right? So those are some of the profiles we help with, but a lot of affect regulation, a lot of anxiety, a lot of just emotional.
Yes, that's really helpful. I think we do have some commonalities in terms of the population that we serve, but we've definitely also referred clients over to you, when we feel like you said, when they're not really ready to engage in the typical kind of talk therapy. We also refer children to an therapist, for example, if they show special interest in, so parents are telling us that they wouldn't talk, but they would express themselves in drawing and so on. I was just wondering about children who have you worked with kids who don't like to draw? Their children as they get older, for example, and we try to ask them to draw if they don't want to talk, and then they say, oh no, I'm a bad artist. Like, oh, my drawings are ugly. Somehow they have that perception of themselves. Like, how do you help these kids to kind of overcome and take the first step into using art as a useful modality?
That's a good question. So that does happen actually, relatively often. Not everyone likes to like art. They're often quite honest about it too. No, I don't like art. Okay, well, that's okay.
Or they failed art in school, and then they learn that they're not good at it.
So that's kind of okay. Not feeling good at it and needing to be perfect is kind of a barrier to overcome, and that can become part of the therapy, right? And it's very common once they become higher grades in primary school, that starts coming up, right? And then the whole topic about, wouldn't it be nice to just allow yourself to do things even if you're not the best at it? Whether it's sports or anything else. Okay, but coming back to the actual art, what would we do? So we do actually a lot more than drawing or painting, right? So it could be using collage. It could be using a lot of the 10-year-olds like to use the glue gun with wood. So it could be doing kind of wood structures. More exciting. It could be physically building things in our play space, studio, whatever you want to call it.
So there are plenty of options.
There's plenty of options. So usually we find something. Sometimes if people are very stuck as well, we use like visual kind of cards or pictures to kind of bring out ideas. It's very rare to find someone that won't engage at all.
Yeah.
And,
I guess the safety, the safe environment that you mentioned, the rapport with them, all those things also influence and help them to engage better in therapy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask about interpretation of drawings, because in my training we had a little bit of it, looking at children's drawings and some of the ideas or hypotheses that we could form. Because it really, as you said, it offers us insight into their world and how they see things. Is it something that you do also, like looking at certain elements or characteristics and maybe having certain ideas about what might be going on for the child?
Yes. So the art would reveal a lot, but we have to be very, very cautious with our interpretation, right?
Yes.
And I think art therapy has evolved over years as a field, right? It started maybe 60 years ago, a lot more, okay, you look for this shape, it means this, you do this, it means that.
It's like dream interpretation.
It's very dangerous to do. One good example is, especially in Singapore, is the red color. What do you think about when you think about red color? What do you think about?
Oh, I think about Chinese New Year.
Right.
Yeah, cultural,
Yeah. So some people will submit in the red color to joyful, Chinese New Year, prosperity.
Yes.
Others will be like anger, hatred, aggression. Yeah. So we want to be very cautious here. And there's a lot of things we don't know as well. Yeah. So I like to always bring back the question to the client, right? Does this mean anything to you? How do you feel about it? And I'll give you an example of something that was quite horrifying. This is many years back. I had a friend. The son had special needs. This is not in Singapore. This is in Europe. And he went to see some kind of professional. I'm not sure what her title was. And he drew a boat, but it was like not the typical way of drawing a boat. Right. It was a special style boat. And in her report, she wrote that the child was like disconnected from reality or had some kind of issue or something like that. And the mom saw the report later on. And it so happened that the mom and the child had gone to an art exhibition or some kind of exhibition, museum about boats, and it was a special type of boat. And so he had just represented what he saw, but then it was assessed to be like something's wrong with him. Right. Because it doesn't fit the mold.
Misinterpretation of the child's art. Yeah.
So that's a bit more of a drastic example. Yes. But that being said, okay, I'm gonna show you an example. So let's say I'm an adult. I had a difficult relationship with my dad. And my dad was pretty good, so maybe not for me, but so let's say you're talking to an adult. They're calm, right? They're just calmly kind of doodling, and then you talk about the father, right? And then they start doing this. What do you think is going on?
Yeah, emotions. Difficult emotions.
No, everything is fantastic with my dad. I love my dad. I have the best relationship. It's like, the body is saying something else.
Yes.
So actually, the body will be saying a lot, and you can see it in different ways. Another interesting example is young children, very young children, maybe let's say 3, 4. Sometimes for some of them, the emotions will come out in the mess. Yeah. So some kids, I don't even need to know what the parents, I don't even need to hear from the parents. When the mess increases, I realize something's going on. Yeah. Then I check, I don't know, something happened in school, change in friend, parent traveling, and it just comes out in that way. Yes. And then then it's kind of calming for them, so they know what they need and they calm. So the changes in mass, the changes in themes, the changes in patterns, some of the symbols a little bit would give us some idea.
Yes, that's so interesting. I'm also wondering, like for parents who aren't professionals themselves, are there little things that they could do at home to support their child using art? Yeah.
So there's actually a lot that can be done at home. But the optimal way of doing it would change from family to family and from child to child, because we all like different things and need different things. I would say the greatest avenue for art at home is one kind of like a calming, could be a calming corner or a calming box, right? Yeah. For the child to self-regulate. Yes. The other big avenue is just for bonding. Now, art at home can go very well. Or it can go like terribly bad.
It could go both ways, right? Yeah. So
it could go both ways. And so I have mom friends, right? I have kids, I have myself as well. And sometimes they'll come to me and they're like, "We've been so complicated and over plan and spend hours researching," and they'll find this like tiny activity. I had one friend, she found an activity where you take a balloon and you stamp paint. And she was so disappointed because her kid only did it for 1 or 2 minutes. Or for like,
After all the effort.
After all this effort.
Yeah.
There's ways to make art more sustainable at home so the parents don't burn out.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Keep it simple, right?
I had a parent consultation. It was a consultation to think about how to use art at home, actually. So sometimes we would provide, consultations one-off. Or sometimes we even design art spaces for families at home. We had one client who was about to become a big sister, so we made a whole setup for her. One of the simple big things is we buy washable materials if you have young kids. I had a mom, she was using acrylic with her young child who had special needs as well, so he had sensory needs. Like, you do not want to wash
not a good idea.
acrylic, and you do not want to explain that to your husband. If your husband is more understanding than mine is okay, but he doesn't like that still. So use washable. If you're alone at home, just put them in diapers if they're young. You can wash them in the shower, and then don't overcomplicate things. I'll give you the most easy activity to do. It's a creative activity. Not art, but it's very simple. Okay, this is a big paper, but let's say, just need a paper. It could be a name card to fold it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you don't need much. We're going to take turns. I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
This is a hat. You're going to use it and you're going to turn it into something else. It could be a mountain, it could be a book.
Okay, sure. This is a magazine holder.
Oh, yes.
Magazine stand, yeah.
Okay. Bloom Psychology magazines inside. Soon after the podcast, your next step. Yeah. This is, what's it called in English? Sphinx too. I'm like a pirate.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is a simple mess-free activity.
Yeah.
But yeah, and okay, we could do like a whole podcast about this.
Yeah.
But I'll just say one more thing about art, and this is true with older children as well. When you're trying to ask your child about their art, right? Whatever you do not ask, oh, is this a cat? Oh, is this a dog? That is a trick question. It's like asking for trouble. Because then if you see it wrongly, and then they're like, oh no, you can't recognize my art. It's a dog, it's not a cat. So just ask, do you want to tell me about your artwork?
So keep it open, right?
Keep it open.
Yeah.
Keep it open. The other trap is, okay, you don't want to say it's so ugly. That's a horrible thing to say. Don't say that. Of course. Yes. But you also don't want to just say, oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, it's so beautiful. And everything is the same answer.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you think it's beautiful, please say it's beautiful and don't discourage your child. But you also don't want it to make it sound like you're not even looking or listening. It's just kind of like the default answer,
Yes.
And you also don't want your child to feel like I put so much effort, and mom says the same thing as when I just do a random line. Right. So often what helps is to look at the child's artwork, and this takes like 20 seconds, right? Oh, I really like how you use these different colors here.
Yes.
Oh, you were so concentrated during the process. That was really incredible to see.
Yes.
So
commenting on the effort, the process of producing it, and maybe just pointing out some element that interested you and ask them to share a little bit more about, like, why did you use this color over here? And
Yeah, and that also removes a bit of the pressure of needing to be perfect right all the time. Yes. And we know Singapore is known for having high pressure in school as well, right?
Yes.
Some simple things.
Ideas, yes. So I was also thinking about progress, because that's often what we think about, when it comes to therapy, and how do we measure progress? How do we know that the child is becoming calmer, for example, being more able to self-regulate themselves? How do you measure progress in children? Like, we're going through a series of art therapy sessions.
Yeah. So the measurement will depend on the child and what we're targeting, right? But what we always tell parents is what's most important is how the therapy is helping and translating at home or in school, or really which area. Yes. Your area is difficult, right?
Yes.
So kids with high tantrums, sometimes parents will come when the tantrums are just too much and manageable. We want to see the frequency go down.
Yes.
The intensity go down.
Yes.
Kids with school refusal, we want to see the refusal go down, right? So step by step. Less crying before, less time at the gate, less overwhelmed. Obviously self-harm, we want to see other coping skills and progress. We know progress is not like that, right? It's a bit more like this.
Yes.
For children with autism, let's say we're working on social goals, right? We may look at things like eye contact. We want it to go a little bit longer.
Yes.
Imagination, we want to see more things kind of involved in the story.
Yes.
So it's really linked back to the
goals,
primary goals.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chloe, what sort of improvements or changes have you seen among the clients that you've worked with?
So actually, we do see quite amazing things. Some kids, the progress is so fast, even I get surprised. There's something about art and the safe space in art that just enables a lot of things. Some of it can be just kind of calming the child. So it's not uncommon for parents to tell us, my child is calmer for like 4 days after seeing you or a few days after seeing you.
Yeah.
It's almost like this kind of weird word. I want to say it's almost like an emotional spa, right? Adults go to the spa, we go get our massage, we go get our facials.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the emotional version of it. So that can kind of carry on. But then more generally, anxiety decreased so much until they're able to enjoy everyday life. The self-harm stopped, the tantrums reduced, Sometimes there's just something happening emotionally that's blocking the child, right?
Yeah.
And we know this, right? Behavior or tantrums is never just tantrums in itself. Most of the time, it's an underlying emotional need.
Yeah.
So a lot of improvement in the emotional world. Now, what's very interesting, and we see that a lot with children with ADHD, ASD, not only, and trauma a lot, is sometimes they'll come to us for emotional reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as like a side effect, suddenly their concentration improves in school.
Yeah.
It makes sense, right? You're stressed, you cannot focus.
Exactly.
You're stressed, you don't have any resources for anything else.
Yeah.
But the change can be very drastic. And the very tricky part, if you're thinking about other difficulties, right? Let's say ADHD.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what is really the ADHD or what is the anxiety. And sometimes we get very shocked by the transformations even in the academic world because the emotions are addressed, right?
Exactly.
And the friendships, it's like...
Yes.
It's like the emotions is the base for everything, as you would know. That's why we're in this field.
Yeah.
And it just unlocks everything else, right?
Yeah.
So that's that. The other interesting thing about art therapy is because kids just enjoy it so much, right? It's just creative modalities, and parents find it works well. Depending on the family, when we feel the child has met their goals, right, their primary goals, then we'll tell parents, okay, I think we're pretty good with the goals. The child's anxiety is down. They're not self-harming anymore, and they're not scared about everything under the sun. We can discharge if you want.
Yeah.
Or some families will say, this is really helping my child. My child really likes this. Let's continue, but then we change the goals, right? So I've had kids that come for reason A, and then reason B is we're just helping them manage, self-esteem. We do have a lot of kids with self-hate, actually. Self-esteem, just general stress in life. So
when you've seen progress on a certain set of goals, then you might either discharge, but if the family finds it helpful, then you might shift to a different set of goals for the child as
so
well.
We could, depending on the family's needs and where they're at and what their priorities are.
Great. I'm also interested in research, into art therapy, and I know that's still ongoing and more research is coming up, but what are some notable findings that you think would be helpful for our viewers to know about in terms of the effectiveness of art therapy?
Yeah. So, I would imagine a stereotype when you think about art is it's very fluffy, it's kind of like mystical, but actually it's very, very research-backed. Right? There's multiple researches on it helping with depression, anxiety symptoms, trauma work, and even neuroscience. So neuroscience is one of the big backings of art therapy, and it's a big part of the master's degree as well. So maybe I'll take my little brain. This is a brain made with...
It's beautiful.
It's the clay. But this has to do with the impact of stress. So we know some stress is good and healthy, right? We need stress to study for our exam. But we know that too much stress, too often, especially for a child below 5 years old where the brain is developing, is very toxic, right? So we're talking about toxic stress. Cortisol levels are too high. And so when that happens, the person is just in fight or flight response all the time. Right? And so the amygdala, this emotional part of the brain, from the front of the just goes...
Yes, we need this for our kids.
So, then nothing goes right. So what research shows is that the art helps to calm this. Right, so that's the calming step one I was talking about in terms of the brain. Once this is calm, then we can work on the prefrontal cortex and thinking about what we're thinking about and making sense of the narrative and changes the narrative from I hate myself to I love myself, or there's good and bad, or in all of us a healthy sense of self, I guess, not bad. And the other thing that brain work shows us is that when this is overactivated, the connections are weakened. Right? The brain will bring resources to what needs resources. If the brain thinks it's in survival mode, then it will act in survival mode and everything else will be left behind. So we strengthen the connections. And even in terms of right and left brain integration, right? The brain shows that creativity, the section of the brain that has to do with creativity, is linked to early experiences and emotions. So that's why in the fluffy, you do art, you deep dive into the unconscious is actually a brain fact, right? So, and then we do get things out. And when severe trauma happens, the part of the brain that is supposed to use words to make sense of narrative is just blocked out, right? The scans will show. So it's not accessible. That's why sometimes adults will have like gaps in memories if they had severe trauma, right? And it's like, things just don't add up in the story, and it's like I think something happened, but I don't know. And that's our body protecting ourselves, right? We don't want to bring things too fast as well. But yeah, so there is a lot of brain work, a lot of neuroscience, a lot of research going on.
Thank you so much, Chloe. I mean, that's really illuminating, and it really complements, what we know, and reminding us, because I think a lot of psychologists, we do some somatic work as well, but there's also a lot of cognitive, a lot of the top-down approaches going on, and it's really helpful to remind ourselves that, sometimes we just need to calm that little part of the brain. So when we work with children, I think this is so cute. We use the hand model with them. I don't know if you use it. So it's like this little amygdala, and then when you flip your brain, you're not engaging your thinking brain or your smart brain, and then that's what happens. But I just think this is so cool. And this is like a foam.
It's clay. It's the clay you were touching that we used to comb. It makes beautiful objects. Because it's a lot cheaper than the $40 ones on Amazon, and it's a bit cuter as well.
Right, yes.
And this is another little clay version. This is our little diver. I didn't talk about the diver, but that's one of our props as well.
Tell us about this.
Okay, so this one comes into my explanation of art and diving into the unconscious. So I mean,
I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's fine. Oh, you lost a little foot, but that's not you. That happened before. Okay, so this is psychology iceberg, right? This is the whole, there's only so much that we're conscious about and aware, and there's a lot under the surface. So when we talk, and you're talking about top down, right?
Yeah.
It's top. Let's talk. Let's think of what's going on below the surface. Okay, so this is the point of this little diver. This diver is made from a peg doll. It's just little wood dolls. They're very cute and they're quite fun.
Yes.
I have a little Christmas edition I'll pass you. Peg dolls. So when we do art or play, this is what happens. Oh, don't like this. Gently. Okay, let me try this. And so we're really able to deep dive into the unconscious. And then from here, we can make meaning out of the art. As and when people are ready, right? Yeah. We're not going to use it too early or too quickly or inappropriately. Yeah. So that's my last little prop. It's our diver that has survived.
Thank you so much. Thanks again, Chloe, for your time, and I'm sure all of you learned so much from Chloe today. And if you've got any other questions for Chloe, feel free to put it down in the caption below. I'll also put Chloe's company link, her website address down in the caption. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you. Goodbye.
Transform it into a little Christmas scene. I should try.